Secure some price for Tuesday, July 29th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, right here at the historic Wall Center. And this show, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sekeres, virtually alongside Blake Price, Mike Rogerson and his four Junos hitting switches and conducting things.
How are things?
It's a bloody big deal.
This is not Jermaine Defoe. This is a little bit bigger.
It is still a bloody big deal.
Yes.
Lots to talk about today after one of, and it's not official yet, but all signs point towards Friday, after one of the most significant player acquisitions in Vancouver sports history, German soccer legend Thomas Müller to join Vancouver Whitecaps FC. Could be here as soon as Friday, signing paperwork. And needless to say, Blake, this was a lightning bolt out of the sky, the likes of which you and I have not seen in our 14 years together doing this program.
We had a little bit on this yesterday, obviously. News that the $400,000 discovery rights deal has been consummated with FC Cincinnati, making it all the more likely. And yeah, I mean, it's we're going to go through it, but I mean, in the annals of sports history in this city, it ranks up there in terms of the biggest names to grace the sporting surfaces here. It's pretty huge. It's obviously not the number one sport in the city, but it's but still.
And we will play that game here in a moment in terms of comparables in the list of big names that have chosen to come play here. But we'll start with our Whistler Golf Club poll question. Are you buying a Whitecaps ticket to see Thomas Müller? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Secure Some Price X and YouTube channels. That is one of the major questions here around this German soccer legend is what does he mean at the gate? We have seen in the past when MLS has brought in big European football stars, whether that's an Englishman like Wayne Rooney, whether that's a Frenchman like Thierry Henry, whether that's an Italian like Andrea Pirlo, they have mattered at the gate. They have brought people to the yard. They have increased attendance both home and away. In the specific case of Vancouver, of course, a huge English population here, right? If you were to bring over a former star of the English national team, I think you can pretty much guarantee that that means some degree of gate. Ditto with Andrea Pirlo. We saw him even as a visitor and what that meant. And if we're going to play the English game, I suppose we should mention David Beckham as well. Muller's German, and that does make a difference. I'm sure there are tons of people, our old friend Kurt Appleby, German side of his family. So anybody with any kind of German ancestry and who is a fan of the beautiful game, I'm sure is piqued by this news because he's one of the biggest sporting legends in his country. But how broad is that?
Yeah.
Like how what's the breadth of this signing? Does he bring all sorts of European soccer fans to the yard? Is it just the Germans? Is it even larger than that? That's a question I find myself wrestling with here.
100%.
Over the last 48 hours.
And there's all sorts of, you can argue this till you're blue in the face here because there's all sorts of pushes and pulls. He's unspectacular in how he goes about, but he's not a defender. Like he's not Bastian Schweinsteiger, who is a huge name in German soccer, but as a central defender, I mean, how many people are you bringing to the yard? Chiellini in LAFC. I mean, that's a small stadium that didn't need help filling. In a 20 million population city. So again, is it even measurable if he sold tickets? I don't know. he's unspectacular, but it's not like he doesn't have bottom line. He is an offensive player that has goal contributions. He does get involved.
Yep.
So it's not that either. He's about as rambunctious and as animated as a German gets. Like he has a lot of fun. He cracks a lot of jokes. He doesn't mind being on camera. He's not a recluse. So there's a lot of things going for you, going against you. I don't know where the ultimate finished product lies of the entertainment dollar of the paying fan here. I saw Rob Williams, our contributor here on Securus and Price, suggest he thinks it'll be sold out for the first announced appearance.
Really?
Now, that's difficult to pin down too, because I suspect he's out of shape a little bit and will need to come off the bench. So is that the game that sells out, or the first announced start? Is that when he sells out? I don't know.
I think what Rob is talking to, and I think Rob is absolutely right here, is, as we know, Vancouver is an event town.
Yes.
And so the first time Thomas Müller steps on the pitch at BC Place Stadium, you have an event. And I think there are going to be a whole lot of curious looky-loos who are going to want to be there in the building that day, much like with the Messi game, much like with some of the other event Beckham and some of the other events and huge sports stars that we've seen come through town that have really brought out all the casuals. So I think you're guaranteed a very, very healthy crowd, even if it doesn't sell out. And we'll talk to Rob later this week about why he thinks they are going to be able to sell it out. But I think you're looking at a very, very healthy crowd for his first game at BC Place. I think it's going to be lasting. Like I think he's going to have some benefit at the gate beyond just his first game. To answer the poll question, I'll vote yes. Like, I'm curious now. I'm interested. I want to see what this guy is about, and beyond that, how he fits with what has been an exceptional Caps team this year that has done a lot of winning and played a really entertaining brand of soccer to begin with. Like, let's not get that lost in the story here. Like, this is a Vancouver Whitecaps team that is tracking towards its best MLS finish either. So you have plenty of reasons to go to BC Place, watch and support this team beyond this week in the news of Thomas Müller.
And Matt, here's the thing. Fans have paid money to come see yesteryear's stars play in MLS, but they've paid to watch them as the opposition. Here you get to go pay the money and cheer on your home city with that guy, which is something that we never thought would come to pass, which brings us to the long uttered refrain, spend the Alphonso Davies money. Well, that's been dripped and drabbed over the years, but this is Vancouver stepping up and spending money, which we didn't think that they would ever do.
Well, and just to bring back the curtain a little bit, a number of years ago, we had a session with Vancouver Whitecaps ownership where they basically laid out that, look, unless we are talking about a guy who sells tickets and helps us win, we are not going to be interested in signing any of these huge name European soccer stars, because more often than not, the outlay, what you have to pay them, doesn't necessarily bring a great return on investment. And that is the other absolutely extraordinary thing about this day and this acquisition, is that this is a guy who, by all rights, could have demanded the same sort of financial compensation the likes of Rooney and Henry and Pirlo and Giacchini, like all of these top stars. And yet he is choosing to come here for targeted allocation money, like not even being one of the highest paid players on the team, which is just the most mind-blowing, I think, element of all this.
And it's one thing for Rodrigo de Paul's doing that in Miami to play with Lionel Messi, though.
Exactly.
This guy's doing it to play with Brian White, all due respect.
Right. And so in terms of the profile that Whitecaps FC ownership had sort of targeted if they were ever going to go down this road, good player who still has something left, can help you win, is a gate attraction, and in this case is reasonably affordable. Like, I can only imagine the high fives that are going on between Greg Kerfoot, Jeff Mallett, Axel Schuster, and everybody involved in Caps ownership and upper management. I mean, this is quite a coup for a franchise that, let's face it, is by no means a flagship for MLS, right? We've talked about it in the past. In terms of strategic markets for MLS, Vancouver has a couple of things going against them. Number one, it's a Canadian market. Number two, it's in the Pacific time zone. They have often gotten these late starts, right, on Saturday and Sunday via their television schedule because they're not a team that are going to bring a bunch of casual or even more ardent North American soccer fans to the art. They're going to be watching the LAFCs, the Miamis, the teams that have more star power. And yet here we are. Vancouver is going to be able to boast a name as big as just about anybody in the league outside of Lionel Messi, right? Maybe Suarez. I mean, you tell me, Blake, where does he slot in amongst the MLS stars in terms of name recognition and career achievement?
I mean, career achievement would be the one. Name recognition is a different category.
Fair.
Career achievement, he would certainly be up there, top 5. I mean, that's a short list, right? I think that's a short list of Messi, Beckham, Chiellini, and Pirlo, I would guess, would be in the comparables list. I can't think of anybody that we're missing in the MLS era. If we're talking North American sports era, then we can bring in the Pelés of the NASL and stuff like that. But if we're just talking MLS, I mean, I think it's that list for the most part. And I should clarify, Monty's trying to call me on Schweinsteiger not being a central defender. Monty, go check. He did not play as a central defender in Europe. By the time he arrived here in MLS as an elder statesman, Chicago Fire played him as a central defender. Go look it up. And it's
I'll defer to you on the MLS star power side of things. What I will tell you is the Daily Poll Question brought to you by and we're going to get to Muller's resume here. The Daily Poll Question brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Designed Whistler Golf Club, reminding you if you want to get around in at the Whistler Golf Club this summer, you've got until August 31st, just about a month left. That's because their extensive golf course renovation is going to begin in early September. Blake, J-Pat, and I played the course last week. It is in absolutely amazing shape, and you're going to want to see what Director of Golf General Manager Al Chris Manson and the Whistler Golf Club has planned for this track as they go about this renovation. Follow all that progress along at Whistler Golf on social, and to book your round for any time in what's left of July and August, visit whistlergolf.com. All right, our top story, Whitecaps reportedly have a deal for Thomas Müller's discovery rights with FC Cincinnati for $400,000. That is according to Transfer Market's Manuel Veth, who's here reporting in British Columbia. We had Manuel on the program yesterday, and he explained to us what was left to do here. And Blake, maybe you should explain discovery rights here in a second, because that is the other thing that has been a holdup with the Whitecaps being able to pursue and attract this level of global soccer star. Cincinnati was hoping to get Thomas Müller. They do have a big German community there, including partly German ownership. They put a big push on for Müller, and apparently it was LAFC or Vancouver in his world. He was looking to come to the West Coast. I've also seen information out there. Manuel certainly mentioned this yesterday, Blake. I see our old friend Rachel Dory, now Rachel Krychak, who does work with German football, talking about if you know Thomas Müller, there was a reason why he would prefer the Canadian West Coast to sort of Midwest America and Cincinnati. Anyways, that deal is now apparently done. MLS insider Tom Bogert and global football insider Fabrizio Romano have all concurred here. Bild, the German news organization, is reporting that Müller will be in Vancouver Friday to sign his contract. From last Wednesday, Blake, where this gets floated on the MLS All-Star Game broadcast, and we're sitting there going, what? Are you kidding me? A player of that level with Vancouver, with everything that's going on with the franchise and Garber's comments about BC Place, you're telling me they got a chance to land this guy? Well, Sure enough, we're on the precipice here. The day is almost here.
It's like they almost spoke it into existence. It was on their vision board a week ago, and then it all of a sudden became a reality. It is hard to believe on so many fronts, the interest, the willingness to go down this road by the Whitecaps where they haven't in years gone by. I do wonder too how much, um, you know, the fact that they've done the diligence and thought that this would impact the gate. Like, is that what tips the scales in terms of spending the money? And then from the players' interest side, I mean, I don't know. It's a beautiful city. It's it's a contending team right now. Maybe he just thought, hey, that's what works best for me right now. And the fact that it's a World Cup city probably doesn't hurt as well. I think you could probably see him, finishing off next year and jumping right into an ambassadorial role with Bayern again or something to that effect, or with the German national team. So we'll see how it all boils down. The discovery rights thing is best equivalence to bring up there is the CFL negotiation list.
That's it. It works almost exactly the same as a CFL negotiation.
It's on its way out. Like, there is so much stink being raised, and not about this. The players hate it. They're like, I'm not a part of your union. I've never played in your league. Why do you purport to have control over me? And Thomas Müller's not saying this, but imagine if he did, he'd be like, why do you purport to have any control over me? I am a free agent. I've never set foot in your league. There shouldn't be anything about it. And there's been a lot of players that have come out since then. And even surrounding this Müller deal, veteran MLS players have said, this happened to me. This rule stinks. Yes. I would bet this is the last year. I bet you this is the last year that discovery rights exist in the Major League Soccer.
And Frank, and some players and agents in the CFL hate it as well, right? Because they sense better opportunity with other clubs. So the bottom line is what MLS and the CFL have in common is that neither is the top class league in the world. Right. And so you have to have a league-wide plan for the possibility that some of the best players in the world, or just some players who are without contract, are accounted for in your league. So in the case of the Canadian Football League and in MLS as well, it's basically a first come, first serve. You identify a player that you're interested in signing or think that one day you will be interested in signing, and you file a claim with the league office. It's pretty standard procedure in the CFL. It's done every day by general managers. They put players on the neg list. They take players off. Priority is given to the team that files the claim first when it comes to MLS discovery rights. If claims are filed concurrently, typically priority goes to the club with the lowest points per game. It's effectively like a draft, Blake, but just sort of an unspoken, unannounced, unpublicized draft. It's more of the inner workings of boardrooms across the MLS than it is an actual public event. And one of the things that we had heard about in the past is that even when the Whitecaps had discovery rights to a player or something that dissuaded them from filing more claims on discovery rights with players, particularly of the ilk of Müller, is that those players tend to only want to go to the sunny destinations, the retirement destinations, if you will, in MLS. So Miami, Los Angeles, of course, New York City has been a draw over the years. So there's sort of an imbalance already with the discovery rights. So if you're telling me it's on its way out, I can understand that. I can particularly understand the frustration of a player who goes, what do you mean Cincinnati has my discovery rights? I don't want to play. I don't want to live in Cincinnati.
Well, two other notes to talk about is that these are probably potentially the final 2 years here that he will sign for of MLS being on a summer schedule. So that bodes well to, being in this city when it's at its best in the summery months versus, having to endure November through January in Vancouver, even if they do take a Christmas break. But secondly, the other shocking thing, and that may have dissuaded big name elder superstars from playing here in the past, is of course the turf. And that has not dissuaded Thomas Müller, apparently, that he's willing to come and play on artificial turf deep into his 30s here to finish off his career. So that's another thing that has been overcome that we have been told has been a negative for the Whitecaps in years past.
Want to read something here from Matthew Shinetti of TSN, who, of course, reports on the sidelines of their MLS coverage and Canadian national team coverage, working with you, Blake, as part of that broadcast team as recently as, last month in Toronto. Thomas Müller is 35, lacks the pace that suits Vancouver's style, but brings, and here's the resume, 13 Bundesliga titles. It's the most all-time. A lot of great German football players over the years that played their club football in Germany and won a lot of titles, most notably, of course, with Bayern Munich. He's got the most. 6 German Cups, 2 UEFA Champions League titles, 2 Club World Cup titles. Was a member of the German 2024 World Cup winning team, and that's just about the biggest trophy in all of global sport, team trophy. 756 games, 250 goals. As Whitecaps builds to win now, here comes one of Europe's great winners. I got to say, I sensed a little Toronto jealousy in that tweet from my friend Mr. Shinetti, that he would begin with lacks the pace that suits Vancouver's style, but you call the games. Tell us what he's getting at there.
Well, it would be a big concern if he was a true number 9. If he was a striker, I could understand where he's coming from, and even as he will play effectively. Well, he'll play as the space interpreter, of course, but
we're going to explain that in a second too.
But even as a number 10, see in a counter. Let's say the Caps are in a counter. Nelson down one side or Ahmed down one side and who knows down the right side of Campo or somebody else. Who needs to keep pace? Brian White needs to keep pace. He'll be just fine. Ryan Gauld, when back, who will come back presumably around the same time Müller comes in, he'll keep pace. And that's all you want. 3 to 4 guys pushing forward on a counter with the pace. That's all you want. The beauty is the space interpreters we're about to describe. He comes in and he finds that soft spot. That's what he's all about. Paul Dolan talked about it yesterday. Late arrival on the box. When everybody's preoccupied with the guys with speed, that's where Thomas Müller finds that soft spot. And you're like, where did that guy come from? And he's put one in the goal. So not worried about the pace at all. He doesn't have the pace, but he won't be required to have the pace in the Whitecaps system.
Space interpreter. Some in the soccer world have said he's effectively invented a position here, Blake. Explain that.
I mean, I for the lack of a better description, like an offensive rover, effectively. There's defensive rovers for all intents and purposes. Andres Kubas could play that. Vite, depending on the night, would have been asked to do that at times as well. Long leash to do whatever you want, really, within a set of boundaries. And Müller is effectively that his wisdom, his efficiency in the game is so widely known that he's earned managers, head coaches' trust to do whatever he feels needs to be done in any given moment in the offensive half in particular to make it work. So he will be able to read off of very talented players like Gauld and White and Seb Berhalter and be able to find the soft spots on the pitch. And it's a game of angles. It's a game of triangles for the most part. And he's just this magic ingredient outside of that norm. These teams are always looking for triangles, but he's this accessory to the triangle that you didn't know he needed. And
it's almost like his on-pitch IQ, which everybody praises as sort of his number one quality, has allowed him to play unlike many have ever played the game within a system. So, okay, as for the Toronto jealousy, and we're going to bring up this TFC news outlet tweet. This is driving Hogtown crazy. That's the city that keeps getting spurned by the big sports stars like Ohtani and Kawhi, and disappointed by the ones that they do land, Defoe, Insigne. And here's a guy choosing Vancouver for less money. Look at the tweet there. When will it be TFC's turn? Oh, no, TFC, you've had your turn, and you blew it. Well, they did win a championship, so we have to.
Yeah, exactly. They have a star where no other Canadian team does. hey, like Toronto will get its turn. It's had its turn. Like Insigne and Bernadeschi was worth the effort. Like it didn't work out, but it was absolutely worth the effort.
Defoe was worth the effort too when they brought him in, right? Like there was an English international that many people in the sporting world, soccer world, were very familiar with his exploits.
But Toronto's got the leg up. It's closer to Europe. So if you're attracting European talent in particular, it's closer to Europe, plays on a grass pitch, and has the international diaspora that's probably greater than Vancouver's. Now, we're a little more Asian influence than European influence, but there is a large population of every international culture on the planet that lives in Toronto. So anybody could feel, quote unquote, at home in Toronto. So they've got a lot going in their favor. The fact that they haven't been able to make it work with the outside of, I guess, Giovinco, who wasn't an international star when he was acquired. But the fact that they haven't been able to make it work with a guy that arrived as an international star, I don't really know why that is. They have tried. It just hasn't worked.
Yeah. And so we look at what the Whitecaps could look like in the formation that Jesper Sorensen could choose to put out there when Thomas Müller is finally arrived and fit to play. Right there behind Brian White, beside Ryan Gauld when he gets healthy. Jaden Nelson, who did such great work on the wing this past weekend in that 3-0 victory. Then your stalwarts there in the midfield, Berhalter and Kubas, your back line, which of course is missing Ranko Veselinovic with the ACL injury. So that's why you have Utvik there at center back, but Laborda, Ocampo as your left and right backs, and of course another stalwart, Tristan Blackman, there at center back. I mean, honestly, on paper, Blake, and you know MLS personnel better than me, but I look at that and I think that is the best 11 that I have seen in Vancouver's MLS existence, and it's not particularly close.
No, a lot of people would have had Ahmed instead of Nelson there. That's an option to them as well. But regardless. We've seen September gets busy too. So they just finished a busy chunk of the schedule. September gets very busy as well. And here's the thing, Matt, is you've opened yourself up now to all different sorts of things. When you've got Nelson and Sabby on the bench to start, or Nelson or Sabby and Ahmed on the bench, however you want to cut it. Tate Johnson, who's been so good for this team, on the bench now. So when you're getting into the busy schedules, you can rotate players through and your play doesn't drop off at all. Heck, JC Ngondo was on team of the match day for MLS for his goal and an assist effort last week. So not only can the 11 be elite, this team has maybe one of the deepest benches in Major League Soccer, whereas a late injury to the season isn't going to be catastrophic. Whereas fatigue isn't going to be catastrophic. You do dare to dream. And the fun part is, remember,
if you're a Cap supporter, I mean, you cannot wait to see this out on the pitch.
And this is the plus side of the first round of Major League Soccer being I know people don't love that it's, a best of 3 series, but it does mean that, you get the guarantee of seeing this team in action a bunch of times. It would be a little bit harder to invest all this money and invest all this, and then in one game, poof, one upset, and it's over. Chances are the cream will rise to the top in a best of 3 opening round series, and it would be fun to see the Whitecaps moving on.
The other thing we should get into here, and I'm getting a message from one of our Swedish friends saying, how come you haven't mentioned Ibrahimovic yet in LA? Yes, of course, Ibra. Now, of course, like Ibra was a brand, a star, like Ibra was.
And his resume.
The other side of the coin from Thomas Müller. Thomas Müller is sort of not the spectacular performer on the pitch and not exactly the outlandish, oversized personality either. Ibrahimovic was all of that and more. But yet, it is difficult to play the comparison game, even in the realm of soccer, but especially branching out to other sports. Yet we're going to endeavor to do it anyways here, Blake, because as we mentioned at the top of the show, this is one of the biggest, most significant sports acquisitions by a Vancouver team, period. And so, look, it's a very difficult comparison with hockey in particular, because hockey is globally more of a niche sport, right? Only played in so many countries, or at least only played at a high level at so many countries. So for people who were trotting out names like Marc Messier and Pavel Bure and Mats Sundin, I mean, fair enough. I would think that Messier ranks higher in the annals of greatest ever hockey players than Müller does in the annals of greatest ever soccer players. But needless to say, those are two, varying degrees of depths on both those pools, right?
That's right.
Bure we had here as a young player. We knew of the legend because we had seen the Russian Rocket at the World Juniors with Fedorov and Mogilny and all that great talent that was teaming with the Soviet
Bure is the Davies equivalent. Bure and Davies are equitable.
Fair enough. We all knew the Soviet Union was teaming a little bit, and there would come a day when Russian players would come over, and sure enough, Pavel Bure landed here. Messier was a well-established star and future Hall of Famer when he signed here. Sundin was on his way to the Hall of Fame when he signed here. Of course, the Lions once upon a time with Doug Flutie, the American Heisman Trophy winner, one of the biggest names in U.S. college football, and then in his professional journey, which started in the USFL. And he was a pop culture figure as much as he was a football player for many in the United States. On the soccer side, there's a couple of names I've seen people bring up. Peter Beardsley, who played with the Caps way back when, but Beardsley was a young player here who would go on to make his legend in English football after leaving Vancouver. In fact, he had a very unsuccessful bid with Manchester United after leaving the Whitecaps before he eventually got to Newcastle and then Liverpool and became a huge name. Alan Ball would be another one in Whitecaps lore. Alan Ball was a midfielder on the English team that won the 1966 World Cup. He found himself in Vancouver after making his he was more like what you see traditionally now of the big names who come on over to MLS. He was here in 1979, scored 10 goals in 31 matches for the Caps. This was after years at Blackpool and Everton and Arsenal, and not to mention with the English national team. So, really difficult to sort of rank all of these names, but also those would be
also difficult, Matt, to rally people to what those guys were back in those days, where of course you did not have a YouTube channel to go and look at the knowledge of who Alan Ball was. Really had to, you had to be a diehard. You have to know where to look to find it's not as easily translatable to a modern sports fan.
Well, put it this way. I think the only time anybody here would have seen Alan Ball play prior to him arriving with the Whitecaps would have been at the 1966 World Cup and perhaps some big international tournaments thereafter. I can't speak to what television distribution was for the World Cup and the Euros back in that era. I imagine you could
one cafe downtown, or maybe
or you're going to the international newsstand, right? And you're buying all the out of market, out of country newspapers,
5-day-old papers
from back then. But no, you certainly weren't connected in any way, shape, or form like you could be connected right now with European football. So there you go. Those are some of the names. We did the exercise yesterday where we asked Grok, compare Thomas Müller to an NHL player, and the two names that Grok spit out were Patrice Bergeron and Anze Kopitar, in part because of the style of play of, those are two of the best all-around center icemen to play the games in recent times, and they may not be the biggest names nor ever were the biggest names in the National Hockey League, but of course, when you project that onto the world of soccer, the Anze Kopitars and Patrice Bergeron level players in the world of global soccer are much bigger names.
Yeah, and it's also
than
just
they
key
are
ingredients, right?
Like in hockey.
If that's what you're getting, if that's the impact of a player, if that's the winning pedigree that you bring, I mean, that's pretty apt comparison in that regard. As much as you can make a hockey to soccer.
No, it's very, very hard, as mentioned at the outset of all of this. The Whitecaps are off right now, enjoying a break until August 9th when they visit San Jose. Their next home game is August 17th against Houston and then August 23rd against St. Louis. And I know you and Paul Dolan will be calling that game on the 23rd. Colin in planning, regular listener and contributor, wants to point out, says, guys, the difference between Muller as a Whitecap and those other stars like Messi and Pirlo is the visiting team is mostly a one-time event. Muller with the home team means there's going to be more than one opportunity to see him, so less of an event on a game-by-game basis. And that is absolutely fair, Colin, but I still do think the first time he sets foot on BC Place pitch, that is absolutely going to be an event that many are going to want to be in the building to witness firsthand.
And again, I think you'd be more excited to cheer on somebody who's playing for your team than cheer somebody that's cheering against you.
And here's the other thing. Like, at this stage of the season, you remember a couple of years ago with the Canucks where they just did so much winning in the early part of the year that we got to December and went, holy cow, like they can't blow it from here. This is going to be a playoff team. And sure enough, it was. I mean, at this stage of the MLS season, with 9-10 games left, the Caps are 16 points up on a playoff spot. They're virtually assured of making the postseason. They're also 8 points up in the race for home field in the first round. Is this three-team derby that we've seen with San Diego and Minnesota. Another no-blood weekend, Blake. All three teams won again this weekend, second weekend in a row or second match day in a row where all three of those teams have held pace with each other. The difference, San Diego and Minnesota are now competing in MLS Leagues Cup. Vancouver is not. So now it's their turn to play a lot of soccer, wear down, lose player to injury, as we saw with the Caps as they were making their way through the CONCACAF Champions Cup when San Diego and Minnesota didn't have to play all of those extra midweek games.
They also, San Diego's got a superstar teenager that is on the verge of a departure. It looks like it just hit a speed bump, but Bombino has been great for them. And if he's on his way out, there's a little bit of a dilution of talent on the San Diego side of things. We'll see if they replace it, as the transfer window is, of course, open now for a few more weeks. But it should be interesting to see how everybody stacks up at the end of this transfer window. And I know everybody hates it, and they've been led to this point by probably the Canucks more than anybody else. So-and-so is our deadline deal. That's generally by a desperate team that is on the bubble or something like that, and they're getting a star player back from injury. In the case of the Whitecaps, them saying that about Ryan Gauld actually does sort of carry a little bit more weight because they have played so well without him.
Well, they haven't seen him since March. I mean, he hasn't played so.
Does feel like a trade. Like it really does.
I mean, it's gonna be 5 months.
Yeah.
Between Ryan Gauld appearances. So, yeah. I mean, you've played 2/3 of the season effectively without Ryan Gauld.
You've accomplished everything you've accomplished without him. So it actually means something this time.
All right. What are our friends at Yellow Dog and Neighborhood up to this week?
Lots going on and lots of announcements, of course, like that of the Ombre Tropical Margarita. This is new from Yellow Dog Spirits. It's a margarita. Yeah, it's not a beer. This tasty bev, bursting with pineapple, passion fruit, margarita as well, creating juicy tropical flavors and just the right amount of sass. It's ready to sip, ready to fiesta, and it's going to be a hot week. Sounds perfect for an Ombre Tropical Margarita.
Okay, as for the Canucks, quite quiet right now. We're going to talk to Patrick Johnston on the program here in a little bit. And we're going to discuss the reporting he's done on BC Place and what's happening there, their response to Don Garber, MLS commissioner, what he said last week, and, of course, the future for the Caps. And can it be at this stadium? Is it going to have to be elsewhere? Can that stadium? We're going to have a full discussion with Patrick on all of that. But one of the questions I'm going to ask him is with regards to Canucks ownership. Because as we know, to their infinite credit, the Aquilinis have financed the hockey operation to the hilt, spent to the cap and beyond for all but one season of their stewardship, that, of course, being the COVID year when there was no fans in the stands. But, you know, as much as we have some big stories with the Canucks this coming season, Blake, in terms of can they get back to the playoffs in the post-JT Miller era and continue to build on what we saw a couple of seasons ago. And then, of course, can they extend Quinn Hughes to a long-term deal following the season? Does Quinn want to be here? Is there a world where he's going to want out, or is there a possibility of making him a lifetime Canuck? there is a third story playing out, and it's more behind the scenes and in the boardrooms, but it could prove just as large as the actual on-ice product record results this season and, of course, Quinn Hughes's future. And I've talked to a couple of people recently who have asked me the question, how long are the Aquilinis going to go in terms of seeking an investor, a partner? As you may know, Canucks Sports Entertainment in May put out a statement saying that Paolo Aquilini, the youngest of the three brothers, has resigned his position and would be leaving the ownership group. Now, the statement did not say how they intend to buy Paolo out or when that was expected, but needless to say, and we've kicked it around here on the show, as have many media outlets in Vancouver, if that's a full one-third share of the club, arena, and land, or even two of those, that is just a massive, massive check to have to write for the brothers who are left with control of the team. I've had a couple of people tell me they believe the Canucks have been looking for an investor for some time, going back months, even before that statement in May of Paolo's departure. But how long will that process go on? I've had a couple of people wonder to me, is there a firm date or deadline where if they don't find somebody else to partner in the club, does that mean the family is going to put it up for sale? The patriarch Luigi is in his early 90s. I've never gotten the impression that owning the team means as much to middle brother Roberto as it does to Canucks chairman Francesco. Needless to say, the family made an incredible business deal some 20 years ago when they first invested as a minority partner with John McCaw. You'll remember that. And then ultimately bought McCaw out in 2006. They thought it was a sleeping giant, and it's turned into exactly that. There was a 12-year sellout streak, and franchise valuations in sports have absolutely exploded to the point where the last Forbes magazine valuation of NHL franchises listed the Canucks with a value of $1.325 billion. That's US dollars too, everybody, and that's significant as well. Some $1.325 billion, which is what, 5, 6, 7 times over or more what the Aquilinis paid for it. As anybody in the sports business realm will tell you, finding an investor, a minority partner, is quite difficult because these tend to be people who have the wealth that they buy things where they get majority say or majority control or final say. Whomever would be investing into the Canucks would have to trust Francesco's stewardship of the franchise. And needless to say, this has not exactly been a sterling decade in terms of the way the Canucks have been run, but it's still a profitable business. That might be enough. There's also been headlines about Francesco and the Aquilinis that if you're an investor, you're doing your due diligence and you're considering all of these factors.
You're just the money.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not going to be knocking on your door asking for your opinions on things.
The bottom line is the hay is in the barn for this season. I can't imagine there is anything that would change with the Canucks in terms of on-ice product, building operations for the 2025-26 NHL season, even if an investor is found here. But does this go beyond this season? Did the Aquilinis at some point have to bite the bullet and sell the whole enchilada or a majority share? Are we looking at a season that, okay, this is the season, and if we don't have that person in place by the end of the season, then something else has to be tried?
Well, the valuation is an interesting thing here because not only does it make the size of the piece of the pie so big, like you talked about, that it inhibits you from cutting a check yourself, it also just reaches critical mass. And I've heard a story posed as, a conversation with one of the Aquilini brothers. I forget if it was Roberto or Paolo in the story, but, the punchline was about a valuation that had been floated in the media. This is years ago, that it was worth $2 billion. And one of them retorted, hey, the minute this thing's worth $2 billion, it'll be up for sale immediately, sort of thing. It was admittedly as a joke back then, But it sort of raises your eyebrow of, is there just a point where the critical mass of money that this franchise becomes worth just gets to a point where, hey, I think we're ready to sell. Like, why else are we holding on to this thing? Like, you generally, yes, there are labors of love, and I think they definitely would have loved to have been the owners of the Canucks the minute they win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
But Matt, here's the other part where these were on ice intertwines with off ice. That's not anytime soon. Like, if they were a contending team, they're coming off a President's Trophy season. If this is 2012. No, they're holding on to it. They're going to see where this goes. Mm-hmm. Who knows what this team is? And if you're the Aquilinis, you've already had an inflection point here with one brother wanting out. Is this the sign? Maybe this is the time to get out. Because if it isn't, you're kind of in it for the long haul here. And it means that, once again, you're risking a bunch of things. Hey, now is not the best time to sell anything. And so I can hear that argument too, that, with the economy where it's at, it's not the best time to sell, but it's a pretty niche market selling massive sports franchises anyway. I don't think we're necessarily dealing with people here that are so affected by the current state of the economy. Generally, the billionaires of the world seem to be doing okay.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And of course, they've had to deal with the matter in the past, the Aquilini family. This was, of course, when Francesco was going through his divorce with his ex-wife, Talia Aquilini. Do believe that there was an independent valuation of the franchise at that time. In fact, this goes back more 15 years than 10. Needless to say, that would have changed over the last 15 years and has gone up. So, there was a time where you had an estranged member of the family via marriage who would have had a claim to some portion of the franchise, and that was reconciled with Francesco and the Aquilini family keeping the team. And not sure how things transpired with Talia when it was all said and done. But, I've had a couple of people in the sports business realm who have, been looking at this ask me, okay, so there's some pretty big questions afoot here. Like, how patient is Paolo? How engaged is Roberto? Where does Luigi stand on all this? And of course, how successful are they in attracting investment? And someone has even asked me, is it just Francesco going out there and looking, or is a united front with his father and with his brother, all three of them going out and looking? Anyway, you slice it, some very, very big questions, I think, on the ownership side of the Vancouver Canucks that are going to get more and more attention as this summer and this season rolls on. Alongside, of course, the ones that we've been fixated on the ice. Can they get back to the playoffs? And is Quinn Hughes here for the long term? Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by our friends at Greta Bar YVR. Looking forward to Country Week at Greta, August 5th to 10th. And the Country Club official after party taking place on August 9th. There's going to be all sorts of great events there at Greta around Country Week, so make sure you visit and enjoy the party. It's also a fantastic spot if you're planning a party, if you're looking for a summer sociable, family reunion, team building event for the workplace. Check out Greta and all it has to offer. It's got a fantastic menu of food and, of course, the arcade that encircles the bar. You can get more info there, gretabar.com. Greta 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. We're going to talk to Patrick Johnston of the Province and Postmedia on the Canucks, but on BC Place and the Thomas Müller acquisition later in the program. Looking at baseball, couple of days here until the July trade deadline, the Major League Baseball trade deadline. Jays have lost again here in Baltimore. Maple Ridge's Tyler O'Neill has home runs in 4 straight games. That's a career high for him. We know the M's have already been active on the trade market, bringing in the Canadian Josh Naylor. Cal Raleigh having an MVP season, and a sad loss for the world of baseball yesterday, and particularly those who were partial to the Chicago Cubs. So we'll talk about that, as well as that terrifying incident at NFL HQ in New York yesterday, and the Canadian Opens, the National Bank Opens tennis tournaments going on in Toronto and Montreal, and there have been some feel-good stories there as well that we will get to on today's show. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. Like I'm 5 in a row in baseball here.
Wow.
Got another win yesterday with the Pirates. They just nipped San Francisco, but they got there. And the other thing I like about the streak is I'm on underdogs the entire way. So I'm going back there today. The Yankees without Aaron Judge, he is absent with that elbow injury, and there is not particularly great news there for Cal Raleigh's chief competition for the American League Most Valuable Player Award. Tonight they face the electric stuff of Rays starter Joe Boyle, a recent call-up from the minors where he was averaging nearly 12 strikeouts per 9 innings. This is one of the good young arms in the American League that a lot of people are excited about, and God knows the Tampa Bay Rays, no pitching. They have developed so many great ones over the years. You're getting Tampa at pretty good value here, plus 165 on the money line, with a Yankees team that probably haven't seen a ton of Boyle and may have to adapt to what he can bring by way of fastball. So give me the Rays plus 165, looking for a 6th straight win here on baseball in this segment.
We have reached the point of young Victoria Mboko's career where she is already the favorite in early matchups at tennis tournaments. That's pretty exciting for her.
Good for her. Good for
her. So again, you have to get creative to get onto the plus side of the ledger. I think she's full of vim and vigor right now. I think she goes 2-love to win this one. So then I get plus 150. She's in the negatives if you just take her to win. But if you stipulate 2-love in sets, plus 150 on Victoria Mboko.
Who's she playing?
Sophia Kenin.
Oh, she's pretty good, no?
She's pretty good. She's a 26-year-old American player. She's not too bad. She's got a Grand Slam win way back. Has sunk down to 26th in the world right now.
This segment, a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. Use code NATION when doing that. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Patrick Johnston coming up next. Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. We're joined by Patrick Johnston of the Province and Postmedia, who will actually be sitting in next week, co-hosting. So thank you for that as we take some time away. How are you?
I'm great, guys. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good.
We're going to get into some of your BC Place reporting in a little bit here as we shift to this huge Whitecap story with Thomas Müller, the German international. But we're going to start with the Vancouver Canucks, Patrick, because I didn't want to believe that there was a world where trader Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin, who have been amongst the most aggressive front offices since they arrived here in Vancouver, were going to quote unquote keep their powder dry and not spend all their available cap dollars when they so desperately needed top 2 center, and forecasted that it would be more expensive not to. As we sit here on the eve of August, is there a world where they're carrying this Dakota Joshua cap space into season and seeing if they can fix their problems then?
Well, they've never been shy about in-season trades. Of course, they're going into the season in a very different way from even last year. Mm-hmm. The plan, if you remember, going into last season was they figured they would add during the season to maximize, especially once they realized they were going to be able to get off Tucker Pullman, to maximize the cap space. But obviously they are now in almost reclamation mode. Mm-hmm. And am I surprised that they haven't pulled the trigger on something yet now that they have created that space? a little bit, but again, everybody's looking for the same thing. So the cynic in me goes, no, of course not. And this seems to be where they're at. And of course, I'm sure tomorrow they will pull off a big deal and make me look silly.
But they sat on that space all through the season too. So
yeah.
they do have the ability to sort of wait. I don't think they're going to sit on this space for the duration of the season, but they seriously they have shown they have the patience.
Well, I mean, as I've said before, if the challenge is what you believe is going to happen with Quinn Hughes, and if the likelihood that he is gone in 2 seasons, and this is the year, as we all know, like this is it. You got to go, and the longer you wait, the less you're optimizing for that. So it's a difficult spot. It's not an easy one, but in the end, this is also a management group that has mostly said, let's go for it. Let's be ambitious. Let's go for right now. Let's not worry about 3 seasons from now, 2 seasons from now. Let's get this season sorted out. Obviously, once again, they're still looking for that replacement for the JT Miller role. They're not going to replace JT Miller fully, but they can find a way. I was listening to a podcast about Moneyball. They can replace him in the aggregate. There's still ways to do it. So my instinct is, yes, they will try to get this done. Maybe it happens in training camp, but I just don't see them going very long into the season without setting up the roster they really want it to be.
Let me ask this question. Of course, they ended last season with acres and acres of cap space. Again, not by design, but because of the way the season went, where they thought they'd be in a position to add. And then, it was all about making the playoffs and didn't wind up using that space because Alvin didn't want to pull the trigger on high prices. Kind of a middle ground deadline, as you will. Keep the owner happy. Don't trade guys away.
Yeah.
Keep the future happy. Don't give up too much. But as we know, this ownership group is buying out Paolo. Is it possible the Vancouver Canucks are working with a different set of economics than they have in previous years because of the cash liquidity needs to buy out one of the partners and the ongoing search for an investor?
Yeah, I get why you ponder that question. I have no reason. I have not heard anything from that regard. I have simply heard this is the things I'd heard was that they were trying to change the look and feel of this dressing room while they've brought a number of guys back. So that was the focus. It was not so much a budgetary question. The only time they've ever really cut back on budget was because there were going to be no fans in the building. That was the COVID season, and the Aquilinis were concerned they wouldn't have fans for 2 years. And they went a whole season without a full slate of fans. And their decision was money in, money out, as they generally have done. And there wasn't going to be any money coming in. So they slashed Jim Benning's budget and made him work with what he could. And that's the only time they've ever not spent money on the shop window. They've always nickel and dimed on other stuff. But the shop window, where the players are, they've always been willing to spend. So I have heard nothing to suggest that is not the ongoing situation.
There's no way of knowing this for sure, but Marco Rossi is probably still available. And now versus in the future, when he's eventually signed by the Wild, you can save Bill Guerin some work right now because Bill Guerin still has to sign the player. So the question is, and there's no way of knowing what other talent might rear its head, but you just play the odds. What are the chances on the trade market the Canucks will cross paths with somebody that is better than Marco Rossi this season? And if the answer is, I don't think that that's likely to happen, why don't you just go make that trade work?
I mean, I guess there's clearly, I think, a variable that we don't know, right? Like, is there another player they think is going to come available based on something else happening? Like,
yep.
That's the only thing I've kind of landed on, is that, yeah, you're right. Like there have been a couple options in front of them, and for whatever reason they haven't gone for those yet. There must be a third or fourth option. I as Kuz wrote about what's going to happen with Mason McTavish, right? Like we don't know the answer to that yet. I think it's very hard. Of course they're interested in the player, but and we talked about this last week. I mean, if you can make that work, you do it. But I just don't know how, and I'm not sure they really have the assets to do it, but you still try. Does that mean you try to get something else? I don't know. Does that mean you have to do a second move before you do this move? Like,
why wouldn't 20 teams be in on McTavish? Why
well,
wouldn't
that's
Bill Guerin be in
right?
on McTavish?
You're competing, you're competing something hard. So what else is there? Like there's just like Jack Roslovic is still out there. He's not Mason McTavish, but he's not an uninteresting player. He had a good year last year for a very good team. He obviously did things like for the Carolina Hurricanes that Carolina liked. There's a lot of things to know, like to understand about that. If that's a player the team like that likes, that's a player you probably should be interested in. I don't think he's a full-on out-and-out second-line center, but he's still sitting there. Like, so there's all these things that are still guys that are still sitting there, and that everyone talked about. Oh well, now once we know where Mitch Marner goes, or once we know, what happens in Florida or Sam Bennett and blah 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 blah. Like all these guys will. No, I never thought there was going to be a cascade of deals right away, but clearly each one affects the next one, and it's a slow burn here.
Do you, I asked this question only because they have done so much shopping in the Pittsburgh Penguins aisle in the past, but have you heard them connected at all to Rust or Raquel, or is it just we can't go after a wing or we have to spend our cap space on a center?
I mean, I wondered if they were interested in Raquel. I kicked some tires on it. I never heard anything necessarily about Raquel during in season. I think they're past the winger thing, especially once you lock in Besser. I think they need the center. They need a guy that can play up the middle. They need. It sounds weird, Filipino insurance. I think you like not to think in those terms, but right now Filipino's their number 2 guy, and they need someone who can fill in if he can't do it. And they lost Pia Suter and. No, center, and they've been clear. Let's be honest. They've been clear for months and months and months. They want a number 2 center. They have not been shy in discussing that. That is the priority.
Okay. We had a good debate about this on Thursday. Were you part of that show? No, you were last Wednesday.
I can't remember. Yeah, it was last Wednesday.
Elias Pettersson. Like, is this boiling down to it may cost them Elias Pettersson and they may have to make a decision on DPD?
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about that. I think if it's Mason McTavish, of course you move him. Yeah. I think it depends what the price is. This is a team that has slowly but surely rebuilt its prospects pool. I wrote this after they signed Medvedev and Coots. They are changing their own narrative a little bit in terms of the players they have in the system. You think about last year, it was entirely about Wielander, Pettersson, Lekkerimaki. They now have a couple other guys they can talk about. There's some more interesting depth pieces, as we know. Kudryavtsev is a guy that's truly emerged finally. And Mancini. Like, realistically, we do need to remember these guys are probably 6'7" defensemen, right? So, like, don't get too excited about them. Elias Pettersson probably is not. Even so, still second pairing defenseman. Like you need to be realistic what all these guys are. So don't be precious with them. If that's what it takes to make a big deal, you move on. You will find the next guy. Of course, the Vancouver Canucks have struggled at finding the next guy on the blue line, partly because they keep trading them away. But the truth is that there is enough pattern of success year over year of finding prospects who are able to play. You think about Melvin Fernstrom's a guy I think people think is going to play. I apologize. What's the Bruskevitz, the kids that they traded to the Flames? There's a pattern of consistency or finding at least sort of mid-tier prospects in a way that, let's be clear. I mean, Jeff Brackett did for a couple of years, but the overall Jim Benning project did not find those kinds of guys. There was not a steady slew of mid-range prospects. The guys you do need to find to fill out your roster to save money, and they have done a little bit of that finally. But nonetheless, if you're trying to get a big name player, you have to move on from guys. And if it takes Elias Pettersson to get you a Mason McTavish type, I mean, that's obvious. It's going to take that and more, but
yeah,
move on.
I also wonder whether this Kaprizov extension in Minnesota may have a domino effect on Marco Rossi. Yeah. Okay, I do want to move on to some of the fine reporting you did about BC Place and the matter that reared its head last week. And lest we forget how big that story was last week, because now we're all caught up in Thomas Müller. But the commissioner said BC Place is not viable.
Yeah.
He put Vancouver Whitecaps FC on the clock here, or at least that's what it would appear.
Yes.
Tell us what you found out about the relationship between BC Place and the soccer club, and how it's being received at Pavco that they are no longer worthy of an MLS team.
Well, it was notable in that, you see the thing, you get, I start punching around on it, asking some questions, and BC Place took their time thinking about their response. And I think it was pretty clear that once it became about, for instance, revealing details on the playoff game, for which they did offer a date within the window, you started getting, okay, things are getting a little, as far as this can be called spicy, but people were staying out of their positions. The league has said, we're not happy with the stadium. You guys had Axel on, and Axel basically said, well, it's nothing new. We need a new stadium. The setup here does not work. It all got me thinking again what I initially thought the first moment they announced they were looking at a new stadium. I said, I'm sure they'd like to build a new stadium. I'm sure they'd also just like to get a better lease. And then I poked around and I talked to people who sort of know how these things work, certainly at Pavco and how it works at BC Place. And there is an element here that goes beyond just the stadium and how your costs work and what you can get in revenue. Everybody knows everything is more expensive, right? If you want to sit back and look at, say, Rugby Canada, who have used BC Place all the time, they are not playing a single men's or women's 15s game here this year. And it's not because of BC Place, it's because of hotels, right? You can get a hotel in Calgary for like $179 a night, and it costs twice as much here. So if you are hosting teams, now I don't believe the Whitecaps pay for visiting teams travel, but that's a cost, and all the other costs are up, right? So your catering costs are up, all the things. So if you are trying to find ways to make money in that stadium, you need more from sponsorship spaces. The team probably, as I understand it, gets the bowl, but you're not going to advertise stuff in there that you can't get on the concourse. The stadium controls the concourse. They get most of the revenue there. There's ways that you cannot generate revenue at that stadium at the moment that we know the Whitecaps surely want to do a better job of. And that's part of the reason why they've discussed about having their own stadium. Now, of course, what a stadium would look like at the PNE if it does go there, and it's built with whose funds? That's the other question. Who's paying for this? I did ask a long time ago about Rogers Arena, and I said, would the city ever support public funds going to a hockey team? And basically the answer was no. And I have a hard time imagining them building a rival venue to a large venue like BC Place and the Coliseum and all that on their own money. That's the thing that I'm trying to get my head around.
Let me ask you this. What do you think is more odious to Pavco? Losing the Whitecaps and guaranteed 17 to 20 dates, somewhere in there, or having to cut a deal where you give the Whitecaps more of the revenues, knowing full well that Amar Doman and the Lions will be next in line for that deal, right?
Yeah, to me, it is a bit of a game of chicken. For exactly, you need, if you build another stadium, where does the football team, right? BC Place needs both those teams, right?
Right.
So that's to me that is the hammer that I'm sure we know the Whitecaps are holding over this. Basically saying, you guys will lose everything. This is why we're talking to the city.
Well, I don't know that there's a guarantee the CFL team leaves.
I don't think it is necessarily true either, but it certainly, all of a sudden it changes the dynamic of all of that.
Yeah, it compromises the financial model.
The model
of BC Place. Then you're out there looking for events to book to make up those states. And that's a lot of events to book because, most events are one-off, 2-day sort of things. So you need a number of them to make up the lost dates from Caps home games.
Yeah.
let alone if the Caps have
I mean,
tons more
it's
home
amazing
games
that we're
like we've
here
seen this year.
because not too long ago, within the last 10 years, a certain reporter in Vancouver was trying to break open a story that the Whitecaps were getting too favorable a lease from BC Place, if you remember that, and that they were getting, favoritism from the government.
Right.
And now it's about, now it's, it's too limiting and it's too expensive. And which is it? Are they, and ultimately, if BC Place wants the business, I mean, you do have to adapt. But ultimately, I don't know that the fit is there. No, I mean, it would have to be grotesquely advantageous, I think, for the Whitecaps to favor staying at BC Place versus wanting to be elsewhere on a grass pitch outdoors.
And especially if that really is a condition of getting a new owner. If the sale is really going to happen, and part of that is having a viable new venue that will generate revenue, which, if you think about that, is the kind of thing that if you're looking to get a loan to buy a team, that is what a banker will want to know about. What are the revenue streams here? How is my money getting back? These things do not happen in isolation.
But the other problem here, guys, is the valuations that become public, which we've talked about on this show ad nauseum, are grossly out of whack with what these teams are actually worth. And so in the public realm, it becomes, public money going towards these events is giving money to billionaires. Except it's not a billionaire business per se. These asking prices make it seem like this is giving public money to the NHL team is vastly different than giving public money to a CFL or an MLS team. We can become Regina pretty quick and be a one-team town. Yeah. We can be, if that's what we're talking about is only solvent teams are allowed to be here. Well, that's fine. We're going to be Regina. We're going to have one professional sports franchise in the city, and that's it. And, unless people are willing to accept that there is going to be the odd public, either handout or mechanism that allows these teams to proliferate a little bit better and compete against the New Yorks and Chicagos and LAs of the world. And I don't think people realize that. They just think billionaires own all these teams. They can pay the bills.
Well, that's it.
In the case of Kerfoot and Mallet, they are worth billions.
Yep. I just thought I'd read out the statement that I did get 2 years ago from Mayor Sim's office. While Mayor Sim would welcome the expansion of additional sports franchises from the NBA or MLB to Vancouver, he's not inclined to support the use of city funds to construct new arenas in Vancouver.
And no politician will get behind that cause unless the alternative is so grotesque to the voters that he or she has to.
Which comes down to
that cause. Like if you're the mayor of Kansas City right now, you're damn well. Of course, you're supporting a stadium finance project because your team is as good as it has ever been and needs a new stadium and has the equity with the public to hold you hostage.
The Whitecaps aren't limitless land. So
but the Whitecaps aren't that. They're not close to that.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, and they went on to say there would need to be a strong business case with clear benefits, both city and taxpayers, in order for him to reconsider this position. So the Whitecaps come and say, "Well, we'll be gone," and they'll be like, "Well, there's a decent number of soccer fans in this town, but is there a cascade of them saying we'll be heartbroken if they leave and we won't, yada yada." Like the thing about sports and stadiums, and this has been true forever, is that there are X number of entertainment dollars in a city, and a stadium does not create new ones. There's just a flat limit to it all. And so again, if you build a new venue that could conceivably hold concerts, that becomes a new rival to BC. I mean, it's not just the sports part; it's the entertainment, it's the overall. That is just taking money away from BC Place, and the Whitecaps will know that. So as much, they will want to listen.
They'll know that, but we're a long way from there, Patrick. And to the degree you can even have concerts on a soccer-specific stadium where the grass is so
P&E just built
sacred.
a concert venue.
I know. That's what I mean. Like it is not a straight line to saying there is going to be a stadium there, and there is not going to be a soccer team playing downtown.
Now,
it's far more complicated.
So to me, next steps on this, and frankly, this is where Kerfoot's reclusiveness hurts him too, because nobody knows what he looks like, what he sounds like. Most people can't pick him out. Yeah. So he's not viewed as sort of a business leader in town who is community minded, even though he has put a lot of money into soccer development over the years, going back to his stewardship of the Canadian women's national team. But, he values his privacy, and that's great. But when you're not someone the community is familiar with, that hurts you on these sorts of things. I would suspect we'll see. I would suspect we're a few weeks away from seeing Jeff Mallett doing a media tour to try and base. No, I think so, because Axel's been doing the case. The next step is somebody whose bottom line is on the line, and that's Jeff Mallett. And then, of course, there's the the cynical theory that everything the Whitecaps are doing right now, from the public gripe with BC Place to floating plans about a stadium that really caught everybody by the surprise, and that the city really hasn't been willing to discuss in any kind of detail, in part maybe because there is not a lot of detail. And the signing of Thomas Müller is a pretext to say, we tried, we did everything we could, now we have to sell it to some U.S. billionaire who's going to move it to a city in
let's
the
just be abundantly clear. There's no public gripe between the Whitecaps and BC Place. In fact, the olive branches were thick and multiple last week.
Well, they're not talking, Blake, outside of they're communicating through lawyers.
That's the reporting. That is not on at face value on the public level. There's been nothing but platitudes and compliments handed out from both sides. Yeah. It is the MLS that has.
Well, okay, but they're standing with Don Garber.
Not really. They sort of refuted that there was any sort of acrimony at all between the two sides. So,
but they agree that's unsuitable as a venue.
Well, listen, they were aware that BC Place sent me a statement. They did not have an issue with what BC Place told me, and as BC Place themselves noted, the Whitecaps were on board with playing on October 22nd last year. The day before, like a day earlier. Mm-hmm. So, and I said, and they're like, yep, we're aware of this, and we have no issue with what they're saying. It is, MLS looks at the situation and says that stadium is not what we want to be. We want to see our teams in their own stadium, and we believe this is an issue. The way it is currently set up is not viable, and the Whitecaps, we need to move forward. As Don Garber said, not my first rodeo, right? This has happened before elsewhere in the league where they've needed new owners. There's been, the Columbus to Austin saga does not need to be recounted, but that was a team that no one wanted to leave, and they almost did, and they ended up figuring it out at the last minute. There is no push right now to move. There's no obvious person standing in the wings trying to take the Whitecaps somewhere else.
The funny thing is,
Bill Laurie to cite very, as Axel said, there was another previous sports team here.
Yeah.
There was no Bill Laurie standing around here pretending that he is not going to move the team.
The funny thing is here, guys, every week, almost every week, it's a different set of Spanish MLS announcers that come in to call the game on the Apple side of things, on the Spanish side. Their objective eyes, their eyes that have seen sporting stadiums the world over in many cases, and soccer stadiums in particular. They walk into BC Place, and I would say, honestly, to a man, say, what a beautiful stadium. This place is great.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
They love it.
The way it looks at night with the lights right there in the city. We talked about it last week. FIFA has used it as the poster child for its 2026 stadium. So, no, I completely understand from a Whitecaps point of view that they need a better deal and more revenue streams from BC Place to be able to have a chance of running a business here and making it work vis-a-vis their competitors. But, the problem is not the edifice. The problem is not the walls, the bricks, and the mortar. It's downtown. It's at the foot of public transportation. It's got so much going for it, which is why sort of my back gets up a little bit when I hear Don Garber shitting on it last week.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, Don, it's good enough for FIFA.
Yeah.
It's good enough for these, for the IOC. It's good enough for all these massive international sporting events that want to come here. It should be
honestly, if it had Bernabeu's, if it had Bernabeu's, fold away grass pitch, I don't think we're talking about any issues here.
There's still the financials, but I hear.
I think they probably feel like a grass pitch is the sign of the big time. And despite the fact they're not alone, there's still a handful of artificial pitches in MLS. I do think it's an easy red flag for them to point to.
Yeah. Okay. As for Müller, this is a bloody big deal to steal the line. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, as I said this, I was talking to someone about this earlier. I mean, listen, he's like, and I'm like, okay, he's not 25-year-old Thomas Müller, but like, he's still at worst the second best player on the team. He's still probably the best, obviously Ryan Gauld being the other option, right? Like, he is a sensationally thrilling addition to this team. And he is going to change. I mean, this is already a team that moves the ball well and does smart things on attack. And it is really exciting to think about a guy who's space.
Yes, the space interpreter. Yes,
interpreter. It's still amazing. A guy who literally, like, a guy who invented a position. Yeah. And it essentially is his nickname anyway, right? Like, it's brilliant. And credit to the Whitecaps. This is the Whitecaps taking a big swing. Yes, he is 35. Yes, it doesn't do anything to do away with MLS's retirement league. But this is a guy who wants to come here and wants to have a go for a couple.
And he doesn't need to be the savior. Like, people have been trying to draw hockey equivalents to Messi and stuff like that. No. Messi was brought in to be the cornerstone of the franchise. If you're bringing in the equivalent of a 70-point NHL player, that is amazing for the Whitecaps. That brings the Whitecaps so much better than they already are. They just want somebody to put them over the top. And this, if he's a 7 out of 10 player, an 8 out of 10 player, that's amazing for the Whitecaps. He doesn't need to be the 10 out of 10.
Do you think he's worth gate, Patrick?
That's something I was thinking about this morning.
That's the great riddle.
You think about the Inter Miami game and how huge that crowd was, and just the sort of the Messi effect. He is not Messi.
No.
But I do think he will make fans of a certain type take this a little more seriously and come a little more consistently. I mean, the Whitecaps have done a pretty good job of rebuilding their support. There is a different one. The South Side is not as big as it used to be, but there are just generally more people in the building. And
PJ, we saw an Ibra bump when Ibrahimovic came to visit. We saw a Pirlo bump when Pirlo came, but then there was a bump there.
Constituencies. Yeah. Different though.
I think
Ibrahimovic is the rock star. Pirlo had every Italian or would-be Italian crowding to see him. As we talked about with Manuel Veth yesterday, like, Müller is not spectacular in what he does. And I don't know, like, you tell me, how big is the German population in
I think
Vancouver?
It's bigger than you realize. I think, listen, if this leads to a groundswell of people like wearing lederhosen as like a fan item, that will draw notice.
I think it's a great idea.
Silly and goofy is what helps draw fans to the stadium. And if that's what you're going to do, if you're just going to have Oktoberfest every night, I think that actually will make a difference.
I have a wardrobe idea for Blake Price and Paul Dolan on August 23rd, as they call the Whitecaps in St. Louis at BC Place. Blake,
I've got a few cuisine
ideas in the little hat. With the feathers sticking out
on the concourse.
Yes,
Let's
absolutely.
Go. Okay, so what's he worth? Is he worth 5,000 fans a game? Less than that?
I didn't know there was going to be a test.
Well, here's the thing to remember, though, Matt, is you don't have 17 home, at least for the duration of this season. You don't have 17 games to try to keep that momentum up. That's the good news, is that you can tell fans, hey, you've only got I don't even know what's in front of them, like 7 home games left.
Right.
Like that actually creates a little bit of demand, because there isn't, we'll see him later on in the season. There's not much left.
I do like. I can tell you that the interest in the Müller stories on our website is high, and in general, a truth is that Whitecap stories have not been big traffic drivers for us, unfortunately, for whatever, just as good as the team has been. But things do break through, and this is one of them. And so the fact that there is a broad interest in signing a player that even I think casual fans will go, oh, they're signing a World Cup player, like the quality is there. Oh, they're signing a team from the German team. Like, who's coming? Like, that will make a difference. I don't know if that's 5,000 people a night, but I think Blake's right. The fact that you are starting to shorten up your inventory will have an impact.
6 home games left, but unlike I know it's in the.
I count 7, but
they played
Are you
11.
the Canadian Championship,
11.
the final.
Yeah, so we're talking league games. Six league games
yes,
left.
I'm counting the Forge Canadian Championship.
So I doubt he plays in that, and I doubt he plays August 9th because that just seems like rushing it. So we're probably down to 5 league home.
But but even August 9th, he may be there.
They're in San Jose.
They're
on
in
August
San Jose.
9th,
Pardon me. Okay.
Sorry. Their first home game is August 17th against Houston.
Right.
So the 17th against Houston, the 23rd against St. Louis. One of those two, I suspect.
Yeah.
Even off the bench, right? And like the other thing in all this is, imagine like Ryan Gauld is going to be back soon, right? Like,
I know.
It's like this team all of a sudden is going to be. Whoa. They're already playing exciting, fun football, and they're going to all of a sudden add 2 outstanding attacking players. Like, it's actually it's.
I saw somebody mock up a best 11, and it puts
fun.
guys like Nelson and Sabby, who have been very good, on the bench.
Yeah,
they're coming off the bench.
Like I was, If you're going to have to figure out how Gauld and Müller on the field at the same time.
Yep.
And Brian White. Like, how do you do this? I don't even know.
4-2-3-1.
Yeah. Anyway. Exciting times.
Very exciting time. Tyrolean hats, Bavarian hats, also known as alpine hats with the little feather.
Yes.
I need to see both of you.
Okay.
I'm in.
Okay.
Let's go. I'm in.
All right, let's do it. Thanks, Peach.
Take care, guys.
Carson Price from the Historic Wall Center. The best plays aren't just on the ice or on the field. Stay downtown here at the Wall. Enjoy an exclusive Carson Price rate and perks. Call 604-331-1000. Tell them Carson Price sent you. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Seattle Mariners win in Sacramento last night against the A's with Canadian Josh Naylor hitting his first home run with Seattle. He also stole his 4th base. He's the first ever M to steal 4 bases in his first 4 games. He certainly doesn't look the part. It was a great...
It's not Ricky Henderson there.
No, exactly. So Vince Coleman in his front. No. Great deal, though. We haven't talked about it. Great deal for the M's last week, though, in getting Josh Naylor. He's got postseason experience, of course, last year with Cleveland. He's a big bat. That's what they needed at first base at a position of need, and it only cost them 2 pitching prospects, and neither of them were ranked in the top 10 of the M system. One of them had just come up as sort of a lefty reliever. Arizona probably going to try and turn him back into a starter. We saw Ashton Izzy actually pitch a fair bit at the Nat this year. He was at that level. And Jerry DiPoto, their baseball boss, is not done, according to reports. Should also mention that elbow injury to Aaron Judge has basically cleared the path here for Cal Raleigh to be the American League MVP. Judge still leads baseball in batting average. He's 4 home runs, 2 RBI back of Raleigh. And as manager Aaron Boone said this morning, he is still a minimum 10 to 15 days away from starting a throwing program with that injured elbow. I mean, it sounds like the Judge is going to miss most of August here. And I would think that if Cal stays healthy and even if he slows down, this should be an MVP season now with his chief rival.
And if the Yankees stay in this sort of mushy middle where they're in the playoffs, but not really close enough to the Jays, but they don't think they can win the East, they're going to shelve him longer and longer because they just want to make sure he's ready for the playoffs. So, by the way, did you see the Big Dumper's new celebration?
No.
He juggles his moves. when he gets to first base.
Okay.
He might want to adjust that one. I don't know that that'll translate for the people at home.
Big dumper and juggling moves. This is quite a theme.
Yeah, exactly.
Blue Jays lose in Baltimore, but also lose George Springer after he's beamed by a 96-mile-per-hour fastball. Of course, he's been a huge part of the Jays' success this year. So has Alejandro Kirk, the catcher who's already on the concussion list. Might need some reinforcement bats as well as pitching by Thursday's trade deadline. The good news for both the M's and the Jays is that the Cleveland Guardians might be more primed to sell than they were not so long ago. Their star closer, Emmanuel Clase, is now the second Guardians pitcher who is on administrative leave and being investigated as Major League Baseball has seen some betting discrepancies with pitches coming out of the Cleveland operation, particularly the first pitch of the inning. Starter Luis Ortiz has already been shelved on administrative leave as baseball looks into all of that. A reminder, our friends at the Nation Network have a brand new podcast, The Sixth Inning Stretch. Lindsey Dunn with three-time Major League Baseball All-Star former Blue Jay Whit Merrifield. Insider stories, unfiltered baseball talk, exclusive player interviews, all the headlines from around the majors. And, of course, leading up to Thursday's trade deadline. New episodes of The Sixth Inning Stretch drop every Wednesday, so follow, like, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or catch them on the Blue Jays Nation YouTube channel.
To be fair to the Guardians players, it's Ohio. What else are you going to do? You got to get you involved in something, right, to keep up the interest. So
yeah, you can only go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame once in Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe you go second time, but it's
they've got relievers too that they
so
on off.
So the thing here is with the Class A suspension leave, Abbotsford's Cade Smith is now their closer, and we have talked about how Cade is arguably the best relief pitcher in baseball over the last couple of years. But Cleveland was sort of on the borderline of, are they going to be buyers, or are they going to be sellers? Now, losing these two pitchers, you wonder if they're going to offload. The Blue Jays have been connected to their fine outfielder, Stephen Kwan, one of the best contact and average hitters in the game, not to mention a tremendous defender as well. And, last year they made the ALCS with all those great relievers. So they have reams and reams of relief pitching to sell on top of Kwan, should they so choose.
Kwan would be, if Springer's gone for a time, Kwan's perfect as a replacement there.
Well, and of course, the other thing is Cleveland has always been kind of cost conscious. I mean, they made this Josh Naylor trade that most of their fans hated over the course of the summer because winter, because they didn't want to pay him. C's added tonight in Tri-City, first of his 6-game set before returning home a week from tonight for Art in the Park night at the Nat. Relief pitcher Javen Coleman has been named the Northwest League Pitcher of the Week. He has been outstanding out of the bullpen. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. And rest in peace to Ryne Sandberg, the legendary Cubs second baseman and Hall of Famer. Few were more spit and polish in a baseball uniform than Rhino. Remember, Blake, the square hat, the brim just so, the square jaw. I mean, he just looked picture perfect in that Cubs uniform. And nobody has ever played the game with more effortless cool. He was a superior hitter, big power for a second baseman of that era. Middle infielders didn't hit a lot of home runs in that era, but Sandberg did. An outstanding base runner, a model fielder. I mean, the eye-hand coordination were supreme. From Spokane, Washington, I think you can argue he's one of the best second basemen of all time. I think you can argue he belongs on the Cubs Mount Rushmore, and that is saying something because the organization's been around for 150 years.
Yep.
And I think he's also on the short list of the best athletes, athletic performers to come out of the Pacific Northwest. He was all set to go play quarterback at Wazoo until the Phillies drafted him out of high school, and he signed and chose the baseball route. Blake and I also have a Ryne Sandberg story, Mike. So Canucks, Blackhawks, I want to say it was their third and final playoff series. Off day, our friend Tom Forch, who's a Cubs season ticket holder, takes us to a ball game against the Padres, and we have dinner in the restaurant there at Wrigley prior to the game. And we're not there, 5 minutes, Blake? 10 minutes? And like Ryne Sandberg walks by, and I'm sort of like elbowing them, like, guys, Rhino, he's right there.
He doesn't walk by; he sits at the table beside us.
Beside us, yeah. And sure enough, here come well-wishers and fanboys, and he was incredibly gracious. And then we go to our seats, and they're pretty good seats. They're behind home plate, maybe 20 or so rows up. And he winds up sitting, 5 rows in front of us, Blake?
I don't even think that. I think it was 2 even. Yeah,
it's 2 or 3 rows in front of us. And then this couple shows up with 2 tickets, and they're doing the, excuse me, sir, I think you're in our seats routine. And we're sitting there like elbowing each other going, you believe this? They're going to kick Ryne Sandberg out of the seats. And sure enough, he and his wife were gracious enough to get on up, and he's walking up the concourse, and people are going, what are you doing? Let Rhino sit.
So that's the kind of royalty he was. He just looked around Wrigley frickin' Field
right
in the prime seats and went, those
exactly.
seats are open. I'm going to sit there.
I'm going to sit there until somebody moves me. Yeah. And somebody did. Somebody who clearly was not a Cubs fan in the 80s, because he was just the model at the time. Read a great story amongst the obituaries yesterday where Gary Matthews, his former teammate, former Blue Jays coach as well, Matthews was good friends with Joe Morgan, who, again, arguably the best second baseman of all time. And Matthews is telling Morgan about Sandberg as his legend is growing, all those gold gloves, I think 8 or 9 gold gloves in a row, all-star appearances in a row. And Joe says to Gary something along the lines of, Gary, my only problem with him is his uniform is never dirty. Remember, this was the era of sort of coming out of Charlie Hustle and Pete Rose, play the game with your hair on fire sort of thing. And Matthews said, Joe, when you're in the right position and can make the clean pick time after time, you don't need to dive for no balls. That was Sandberg, just born to play baseball. Terrifying news from the National Football League, where a gunman breaks into their New York City head offices, takes the wrong elevator, but winds up killing 5, including himself, and wounding another, a former California high school football player who claimed to suffer from CTE and held a note about the NFL concealing the dangers of football to players' brains. I can only imagine what the security is going to be like going forward here at the National Football League head offices in Midtown Manhattan, but also you wonder whether that's also going to extend to the stadiums, Blake.
Well, yeah. I mean, they've got multiple targets, don't they, if somebody wants to be crazy enough to attempt something like that. So it's... very disheartening. I mean, there was another mass shooting as well outside a casino in Reno yesterday. It's a heck of a world, and when you've got access to guns like that country does, it's doubly dangerous. So,
yeah, tennis, where Genie Bouchard gets a moment. So happy for her. Playing at home at Montreal's Jerry Park, the National Bank Open. Bouchard wins her first tour level match since 2023. Her first match at this tournament since 2016. She is, of course, retiring after this tournament at the age of 31. Full crowd last night, and they moved her to emotion in the aftermath with a huge ovation. So she's into the next rounds, and needless to say, is going to be quite a draw for maybe the final time here in Canada on court in her hometown.
Now, obviously, that's going to be the easiest of her matches, being the first round match. But I also wonder if she was able to just get it all together for one final match, knowing that, hey, if I win a match here, that's going to feel like I won the tournament. I don't know if she can win 2. If she wins 2, then maybe there is a dream of a Cinderella run of some sort. But we'll see. But it's good for her. She's added a lot to the Canadian tennis landscape over the years. So
she has. She had only played one match prior to this, Blake. in all of 2025. She's got Bencic, the 17 seed, the Swiss player, number 20 in the world, coming up. Rebecca Marino, Vancouver's Rebecca Marino, also she loses this morning. She's also playing a seeded player. We'll see what Leyla Fernandez, Bianca Andreescu can do. A nice moment in Toronto, too, where Alexei Galarno wins his first ATP Tour level match, and people stayed late to wish him well. See how the men can do with Chapeau and Felix on court as well. Results of our Whistler Golf Club poll question from Monday. What should the Canucks do with their cap space? Blake, to refresh, there was sign a player, trade for a player, or use it in season. What did the people say?
It's difficult. I think I'm going to say that they go for broke and say trade a player.
Correct. Trade for a player. Percentage?
50.
63. Use it in season, got 28%. Sign a player, got 10%. Adam, get a freaking second C like they told us they were going to at the beginning of the offseason. Have failed miserably because there's now slim pickings. Hassan, use it in season. No good UFAs or realistic trade targets. Would rather accrue and see if something opens up in season instead of wasting space on mid players. Fair, Hassan. We talked about that yesterday. We also talked about how don't think it's going to get easier in season as well. And VJ says, sign or wait. I don't trust them to trade. Ooh, getting harsh out there.
Wow.
Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. I will self-report. Last Thursday, I said the Jays taking on the AL's best team, Detroit. They had already passed the Tigers at that point and moved into first place of the American League. And yesterday, when we were chronicling all the events that have happened with Vancouver Whitecaps FC this week, we mentioned the All-Star game, the 4 players there, Taka Oak, and the skills competition. Should have also mentioned Brian White scoring a goal in the All-Star game.
We did. No, we mentioned that.
Did we?
Yeah, we absolutely
did.
Yeah.
I thought we missed that one. First ever cap to do so.
I also ambiguously referenced the CFO rule change in the final 3 minutes. I actually couldn't nail down. I saw some references to it in the late 80s. I also saw one reference to 2006. But information, historical writing on the CFL is really poor.
No, it is sometimes difficult to dig those sorts of things up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just... Luke Wilson talking about the urgency. There's also urgency. The clock isn't running all the time, but do you need that? To me, that only enhances the urgency, right? Because you're going to see more plays. If you're down with 1 second left, you get a final play in the Canadian Football League. In the NFL, the clock just expired. Last 3 minutes of the NFL, last 2 minutes of the NFL. You see a lot of games end on an E. You see some games end with the clock simply expiring because it runs out of time. So anyways, whatever Luke wants. Leave Luke alone on his journey of discovery with the 3-down game. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays, no Fridays in the summer. We will also not have a show on the BC Day holiday Monday coming up. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.